Beneath the glittering facade of Fairmont Crest, where white fences encircle luxurious mansions not only to preserve privacy but also to keep the truth from leaking out, Peaches suddenly appeared like a ghost from the past, carrying a story both shocking and deeply emotional, yet riddled with contradictions. With no documents, no witnesses, only a trembling voice and eyes that seemed to have endured a lifetime of suffering, she declared that Leslie was the biological daughter of Barbara, a woman now deceased, a secret member of the famed music group the Articulates, and a controversial figure within the powerful Montgomery dynasty. If true, this revelation would not only transform Leslie's identity but also deliver a devastating blow to the fragile order of the black elite who ruled behind the gates of Fairmont. Yet Peach's appearance was so strangely timed that suspicion was inevitable. She surfaced only days after Barbara's death, right when the media was abuzz about the division of the estate, particularly the multi-million-dollar trust fund meant for Barbara's heirs. An unknown woman, with no medical records, no direct ties to the Montgomerys, suddenly emerging as a self-proclaimed emissary of the past, cast the entire story in a shadow of doubt. If Peaches truly knew that Leslie was Barbara's daughter, what stopped her from speaking sooner? Why wait until no one was left alive to confirm, defend, or deny the claim? And if illness was the reason, why has no doctor or medical institution been able to verify her condition to this day? What deepened the doubt further was the way Peaches narrated the past. The fragments of her story seemed almost too perfectly arranged: a young Barbara trapped in a secret romance, an unwanted pregnancy, crushed under the weight of family pressure and the demands of the entertainment industry, forced to entrust her baby to Peaches. At the time a maid or close confidant. Then, out of guilt and moral burden, Peaches supposedly raised Leslie in silence, living a humble life, asking nothing for herself. Now, with death at her door, she claimed she could no longer keep the secret and wanted Leslie to know her true origins. If this were the script of a television drama, it would be flawless. But in the real world of Beyond the Gates, where power and self-interest are the only compass, such coincidences felt inherently suspicious. And then came Leslie, the unwilling central figure who made the situation even more complicated. Her heart wavered between a fragile desire to believe Peach's words and a deep fear of being used. Leslie was intelligent, ambitious, and no stranger to the artificial glitter of Fairmont Crest's high society. She understood the value of a name, of a lineage that could open doors once locked forever. So when Peaches arrived offering her that name, was Leslie merely a victim caught in someone's scheme, or was she also a calculating woman who recognized an opportunity and seized it with cold precision? Some within the Montgomery family, especially Anita, were immediately skeptical of Peaches. They didn't need hard evidence, for their instincts alone sounded the alarm. Anita was not someone easily swayed by emotion, and her refusal to accept Leslie stemmed not only from pride but also from vigilance. She had fought hard to protect Barbara's legacy from exploitation, and now an unknown woman suddenly claimed to hold the missing piece of a legend? Peach's boldness in walking into Fairmont Crest did not resemble a frail, sickly woman seeking forgiveness. It felt more like a calculated strike into the heart of a family already crumbling from within. Still, if prejudice is set aside, one possibility remains: Peaches could be telling the truth. In a world where truth is so often buried beneath layers of spin, legal maneuvering, and self-interest, the trembling voice of a dying woman might be the most honest testimony of all. Perhaps Peaches had spent her life in silence and torment, hiding a secret to protect both Barbara and herself. Perhaps she had watched Barbara torn between fame and conscience, and had borne witness to the painful decisions that haunted her. And now, with everyone else gone, with only Leslie left as the final living fragment of truth, she could not leave this world without passing it on. The terrifying part of this story is that every card in this game is tainted with suspicion. If Peaches were a fraud, she had chosen the perfect moment and target. Leslie, with her beauty, education, and poise as an ideal heir, was the golden gateway through which Peaches could infiltrate a circle that had never welcomed outsiders. But if Peaches were telling the truth, then the Montgomerys had inadvertently rejected their own bloodline out of pride and the need for control. As for Leslie, was she simply an abandoned child rediscovering her origins, or was she an ambitious woman using this revelation as a springboard into prestige and influence? Another question must be asked: why did Peaches leave no trace? In an age when DNA can confirm bloodlines in days, why had she not pursued testing herself? Was it because she knew the truth could not be verified, or was she deliberately stalling to conceal unfavorable facts? And if she were truly gravely ill, why were there no hospital records? Everything rested on her words, her tears, her handwritten letters without certification. The supposed evidence was entirely emotional, and emotions are the easiest things to manipulate. Meanwhile, Leslie's inner circle began to fracture. Some believed she was being deceived and needed to be pulled back from the brink of delusion. Others insisted this was her chance to claim what rightfully belonged to her. The question was no longer just whether Peaches was a fraud, but whether Leslie wanted to believe her. In the world of Fairmont Crest, belief did not always come from truth, it often came from the desire to turn lies into reality, as long as it brought power. In the end, in a world where redemption may mask manipulation, and family bonds may be wielded as weapons in battles for influence, Peaches remained the greatest enigma of all. She could be a seasoned con artist, cunning and skilled at weaponizing tears and memories to achieve her goal. Or she could be a broken woman who had lost everything, with only one final secret left to unburden before time ran out. But whoever she was, her arrival redrew the map of power within Fairmont Crest, forcing every player to confront themselves and the most haunting question of all: in a world built on lies, can any truth ever remain uncorrupted by ambition? The experience and sophistication of Anita and Vernon had long been the pillars that helped the Dupree family weather countless internal storms and fend off attacks from the outside. They were not the kind to be swayed by tears or moving stories without proof. But this time, the story Peaches brought forth was not merely a claim of bloodline, it was a spark threatening to set fire to the entire structure of trust, legacy, and history the Dupree dynasty had built. In the beginning, Vernon remained neutral, quietly observing, gathering fragments from Peaches' account and Leslie's behavior. Anita, though furious and outspoken, did not entirely close the door on doubt, for deep down she had once been closer to Barbara than anyone else. If there were memories still buried, Anita was the one most likely to uncover them. Yet her affection for Barbara could become a double-edged sword, softening her defenses in the face of unverified evidence and making her vulnerable in a game where every motive hid behind the mask of sentiment. Meanwhile, Leslie did not behave like an innocent woman overwhelmed by a shocking revelation about her origins. On the contrary, she swiftly seized the moment, appearing at high society events in glamorous attire, using every opportunity to assert her unverified inheritance. Her frequent presence at family gatherings, social galas, and even Barbara's trust meetings left many wondering whether she truly sought her roots or whether she was a calculating opportunist gradually inserting herself into an empire of wealth and prestige built over decades. The suspicion grew sharper when internal financial reports revealed that the Barbara Trust, created only after her death, had unusual withdrawals marked as emergency expenses related to Barbara's heirs. The money trail led to shadowy accounts under intermediaries, which preliminary investigation linked indirectly to both Peaches and Leslie. Anita's suspicions deepened when she saw Leslie spending recklessly, buying designer goods, and gracing fashion magazines as though she were already a rightful Dupree. Vernon, meanwhile, could not ignore the suspicious timing of Peaches' arrival. Leveraging his old connections in the legal world, he discreetly contacted Ted, a lawyer who had once worked with Barbara, to re-examine her will and private documents from her final years. At the same time, Bill, Vernon's trusted friend and Barbara's former personal physician, was asked to review her medical files, especially any notes or private exchanges that might reveal whether Barbara had ever been pregnant or given birth in secret. The initial search yielded no clear answers, but the ambiguity itself made Vernon believe that either a deliberate cover-up had taken place, or Peaches' entire tale was an elaborate fabrication, woven from truth and lies to deceive those whose judgment was clouded by loyalty and emotion. Without waiting for solid proof, Leslie took legal action to legitimize her claim. She and her attorney filed a petition demanding recognition as Barbara's biological daughter, which would make her the rightful heir to the Barbara Trust. This was the breaking point. Anita and Vernon, instead of continuing their private quarrel, formally opposed her in court. The judge ordered a DNA test using biological samples preserved from Barbara's final treatments. Meanwhile, Ted and Bill continued digging into the past. A breakthrough emerged. Decades-old birth records revealed that Peaches herself had given birth to a baby named Leslie in a small town, with no connection whatsoever to Barbara or the Articulettes. Moreover, the letters Peaches had presented as proof of her relationship with Barbara were exposed by a handwriting expert as forgeries, written with modern ink and in styles inconsistent with the era she claimed.
Once revealed in court, these discoveries could not only nullify Leslie's entire claim but also escalate the matter into criminal territory. If Peaches were proven to have fabricated the story to seize assets through another, she could face charges of fraud, forgery, and misrepresentation for personal gain. Leslie, even if she claimed ignorance, would still face civil consequences for spending money drawn from the Barbara Trust through questionable disbursements. She could be forced to return the funds, sued by the Dupree family or the trust itself, and stripped of both her wealth and her standing in the elite society she had only just entered. And yet, if everything were merely lies, the matter would be straightforward. But the true tragedy might lie in the possibility that Peaches was not entirely deceitful. Perhaps she had indeed shared a bond with Barbara. Perhaps Barbara had once considered entrusting her child to someone else, but the decision was never documented or was erased by Barbara herself. Perhaps Leslie had genuinely grown up believing the story her mother told her, unaware it was false. In that case, the verdict would not just condemn fraud, but also unravel an entire identity, leaving mother and daughter broken, not only legally but morally, when everything they had believed, their name, their memories, their motives and dreams, were swept away by an unforgiving truth. And when the trial ended, no matter who prevailed, the Dupree family would not emerge whole. Barbara's image, powerful woman, music icon, mother, and the memories of those left behind would be left scarred by suspicion and division. Leslie, even if cast out of Fairmont Crest with nothing, would leave a lasting mark like a storm tearing through their lives, widening the fractures of the past. As for Peaches, if she had to face a sentence in her final days, she might not die from illness, but from the anguish of watching her daughter, whether born of truth or of deception, shattered by a dream that was never theirs to claim. This would not be merely a legal battle, but a moral tragedy of the era, where the poor try to climb through sympathy, while the rich must wield blood and law to defend their inheritance. In the end, the upheaval Peaches created resembled a storm with two centers, one of quiet revenge and one of desperate redemption. No one, not even those who claimed to stand for truth, could ever be certain of her identity, for every piece of the story could be explained in two directions, either a calculated fraud or a long-buried truth. That paradox is what made the tragedy of Peaches unique, not just a scam to be exposed by DNA and legal proof, but an emotional war in which prejudice, faith, and memory themselves became double-edged weapons. If Peaches had indeed orchestrated a scheme to manipulate emotions and inheritance, then punishment was inevitable. The forged documents, the false testimony, combined with Leslie's reckless spending of trust funds, could all amount to crimes, civil and criminal alike. The court could sentence Peaches to prison, even in her final days, should the justice system wish to send a message. Leslie, as an accomplice or beneficiary, could be ordered to repay every cent withdrawn. Luxury items, social events, foreign trips, even investments in reputation. Everything could be scrutinized and seized. For a woman who had only just stepped into the elite circle, this would not just be financial ruin, but a fall from grace so devastating she could never recover her dignity or place. Fairmont Crest, which once welcomed her as a symbol of change, would turn its back coldly, branding her as an imposter. Yet if the opposite were true, if everything Peaches said was real, if her silence had only ever been born of fear, shame, and hardship, then the guilt would not belong to her, but to the Montgomerys and the Duprees. Those who used power to doubt, exclude, and disown would face moral, legal, and public consequences. If Leslie had been rejected, humiliated, and stripped of what should have been hers, the public would not see her as ambitious, but as a daughter cast aside by her own blood. Peaches, instead of a schemer, would become a symbol of black women silenced and marginalized by systems of class and race. The story would no longer be about money, it would be about recognition, delayed justice, and the devastating cost of burying truth to preserve reputation. In both scenarios, what is undeniable is that Peaches' appearance completely changes the balance of power and trust in the Montgomery family's system, which has been maintained by silence and secrecy. Whether real or not, she brings every character into the light, forcing them to face their past, the decisions that have brought them to where they are, and the consequences that they can no longer hide with their reputations. If this is a plot, it is a masterful plot, and it strikes at the greatest weakness of the upper class, the fear of losing control. If this is a journey of redemption, it is a beautiful tragedy, where a mother is willing to sacrifice her late-life reputation so that her daughter can have a rightful place. In the end, whatever the verdict of the court, whether Leslie leaves Fairmont Crest to laughter or tears of sympathy, the aftershocks of this story will linger in the minds of viewers. No one can say for sure whether Peaches is a manipulator or a victim. But everyone will have to wonder, what would have happened if the Montgomery family had not kept silent, if Dupree had not been arrogant, if trust had been placed in the right place? And if one day, the truth about Barbara was fully revealed, a truth that perhaps no one was willing to accept, would those who once doubted Peaches have the courage to apologize, or would they continue to bury it under a shell of power and tradition? Whether it was a plot to deceive or an alarm bell for secrets that had been denied, the appearance of Peaches was an irreversible turning point. It not only broke the conservative wall of the powerful family, but also forced everyone to look at the truth that they once wanted to forget, once wanted to bury with the dead. And that is the deepest tragedy, when the truth comes not to free, but to force everyone to pay the price.